Guess who's back?
Back again. Welcome to the Wrong Indian Podcast.
Native Americans of all trades, masters of none.
What does that mean? Oh, we have a lot to say. We are not the expert.
But we talk to the experts on a variety of issues.
I'm Brittany Schulman.
Kenrick.
This is the Wrong
Indian Podcast. Welcome back to another, actually, it's not another, this is a special episode of the Wrong Indian Podcast. In fact, it's a special What Are We Watching? I'm Kenrick.
And I'm Brittany Schulman. And in this episode, we are talking about a movie we have been so fortunate to see, Monkey Beach. I'm telling you, not only do we get to talk about this really cool movie, we also have a special guest. And it is the director, Loretta Sarah Todd. So she is known for lyrical expressionistic imagery combined with strong storytelling skills. She tells the truths that are haunting, funny, and real. And Ms. Todd credits include award-winning documentaries such as Forgotten Warriors, The People Go On, and The Hands of History with the NFB of Canada, digital media work, television. She also created, which I was super excited about, the My Cree app, which is a Cree language learning app. I'm always looking for ways to teach my children their language. They're Ojibwe. So to know that there are people making these kinds of digital media is just awesome. But this fall, she is releasing Monkey Beach, which is her first feature-length film based on the iconic Canadian novel by Eden Robinson. Welcome to the show. We are so glad that you're here.
Hanse, so glad for you to welcome me. I really feel honored and appreciate the time you're taking with me.
Awesome. So before we move forward, just tell us a little bit about Monkey Beach.
Monkey Beach is a book that was written by Eden Robinson, who's a Haisla novelist, not Haisla Heiltsuk, from the Kitamaat area, which is in sort of northern BC. And I was very fortunate to option it. A few years ago. Eden was kind enough to say I was the only person she wanted to make Monkey Beach, and she was very patient with me because it took many years. The book was a Canadian bestseller. It also was published in the States and France and Germany and England, and it sort of has stayed. It's been published. It's like the 25th, the 26th, the 27th publication. It's taught in universities and high schools throughout Canada and, in fact, the world. So it's a pretty important, special book. And it was something that I was really drawn to. And so I'm really, really honored that she let me turn it into a feature film, despite how long it took to make it. I'm not Heiltsuk. I'm actually Niawa and Métis from Alberta. But I've lived in Vancouver and the coastal areas for a long time now. So I do my best to honor the territories I'm not in. And so I feel even again, doubly blessed and honored to be able to turn Monkey Beach into a feature film.
I have to tell you that even though I haven't read the book, I so enjoyed the movie. It wanted me to watch the book. And I think that's the real good sign of any great book turned movie. But I really want to know, what was the most difficult part of translating the book into movie?
Well, the book is, even though it's a fairly quick read, I mean, and you can read it, have some books take like for a long time to read. This one actually takes not too long. You could do it in a day if you were really had nothing else to do or just were really drawn to it. But despite that, it's very complex. It's very layered. She shifts time. Even in a paragraph, she'll shift time. So it's very elliptical and very nonlinear. So that was a challenge. How do I capture that? How do I capture that sort of very elliptical way of telling a story? And then how do I make choices? Like there's some beautiful scenes that I just couldn't do. I mean, the scenes where they go to this area called the Kitlo, which I've never been to, but I've seen pictures of. It's further up away from Kitamaat, the village, or even from Monkey Beach. It's, a good boat trip there. And so, but it's just gorgeous. So it would have been beautiful to be able to film those scenes So leaving things out, I think it breaks my heart still that I had to leave so much of the book out. But I really hope I captured the essence of it, the essence of the characters, the essence of the place, and the essence of the storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I thought the film was just breathtaking. I truly enjoyed it. And as Indigenous people, we've always been storytellers. So I loved how you were able to make it feel as if I was sitting down with one of my elders and he was telling me a story and that I was seeing it through a modern lens. That's what I really enjoyed about this film. It was like a connection between old and new, but without having to be so on the nose about it, you know? So, I mean, this movie was talking about very heavy material. I mean, we were talking about boarding school trauma, rape, substance abuse, and death. And, you know, all through the eyes of your main character, which is Lisa. And I just want to know, like, how was it directing Grace Dove, who is your Lisa?
Well, Grace is really remarkable. I mean, it did take a few years to make this film, so there's so many actors that I would have liked to have worked with before, and I'm sad to say that they were no longer the age for the character. So, but when Grace came along, she just really embodied the character. I was really doing my best to try to include new faces, even though, you know, Grace has been on a Netflix series and, you know, done a Netflix film. But at the same time, you know, I was also looking for people who were from British Columbia. She's not from the coast. She's from like about 8 hours over from where Kitamaat is. So she's also sort of like in that sort of general territory. And she has such a, well, she's beautiful. So that was also, but she kind of transcends the beauty. She is just inhabits the character. She just completely let that character. In fact, when we were in production, I asked her, did she want me to call her Grace or Lisa? She said Lisa. So she became Lisa. And I think what was amazing about her is we're dealing with a character who has this medicine, who has these sort of supernatural abilities, but she's, you know, not comfortable with them. And I think that sort of that everydayness that you talk about, that kind of modernness, is there, and, you know, her persona, who she is, and yet she's struggling with things that are ancient, that, you know, have been going on for millennia, for
Right.
time, memorial, long before, us today. So somehow she was able to embody that, and so it was really good. We had that first day thing, and I said to her, "Look, I'm here to make you a star. I'm. It's not about me. I'm the storyteller, but it's not about me. So just trust me." I didn't use the word trust, but we developed this trust, and I really feel that it really shows in the film.
I think so too, and it's the part that I really appreciated. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's indigeneity through every day. It was those little moments, like when she goes back home and she's just standing there and just smells the air for a moment. As urban natives ourselves, Kenrick and I, we know that moment of you've been in the city and now you go home. It's like the smells are different. Or when she's the aunties like call her like, "Oh, you're such and such's granddaughter. Hop in. We can't do you wrong because you're our relative." That moment. And even going to the local basketball game, because who doesn't go home and go to their local basketball games? There's universality to those moments. But also the music. I was so captivated every scene with the layers of not just the visuals, but also what I was hearing and how that was translated through the story. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you chose that music? And of course, everyone is going to see this, wants to know about, the Snotty Nose Reds kids, how it was working with them.
Well, if anybody watches my earlier work or my work I'm doing today, like I'm doing a children's series called Coyote's Crazy Smart Science Show, which is about Indigenous science. I did another children's series called Nahiawaitan, which taught little kids like 5, 6 how to, and introducing them to Cree. It was, I've been doing like really music that doesn't really like be considered, children's series. Oz 12, Ronnie D. Harris was the composer for that series, the first series. So there's a lot of hip hop, and in Coyote Science, the same thing. There's a lot of mob bounce in Monkey Beach, but there's mob bounce and Coyote's Crazy Smart Science Show. So I've been doing that. I've been kind of taking, and I like to think it's because I'm kind of, despite not being more an auntie than a youth, I'm very eclectic in the music I love, the music I listen to, the sounds that really move me. So that was, hip hop in a children's series. So that's always been something that just drives me anyways, but it was really critical that I include the music from that area. So Mob Bounce is from there, Starting Those Res Kids is from there, Heaves the Earth Child, they're all from that area. And of course, Starting Those Res Kids are actually from Kitamaat, the village. So it was fairly easy for me to go with that music. And then it was to find the right songs that fit with it. And then I was also really fortunate to work with two composers, Jesse Zubat, who is not Indigenous, but who works with Tanya Tatak, amazing Innu throat singer, and then also Russell Wallace, who's a Lowat composer that I've worked with for many years. And so together they really collaborated. And then I have the beautiful Tiffany Moses' voice that you hear throughout it. I feel really, I took a lot of care with the music. It's something that's really important to me. It's funny, when I went to film school, they said, oh, no, if you put music in there, it's just because you're being a lazy filmmaker. You're just using the music to create emotion. I'm thinking, well, maybe that's the way you think. But as an Indigenous person, the music is central to storytelling. And so it was easy for me to do that.
Absolutely. I caught that. I caught the care and I appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say, and Starting Those Res Kids are just amazing. They're just lots of fun, and they're good, and they're cool, and I wish them all the success because they certainly deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw them on screen, I was just like, "Oh man, that is so awesome! That is like so cool." And the thing is, like, it's so easy to getting taken out of a film, because of the choices of music and trying to set a mood. I mean, I never had that moment at all in this film. I mean, the whole time I was locked in, as when I heard, like your subtle music in the background, or if I'm hearing, the Snotty Nose Res Kids, I'm like, I was so in it the whole time, 100%. And not to mention just the music, but the cast. Can we talk about your cast?
I will. And I should also mention that with also in there, Esque, and two really strong Indigenous women composers and musicians here, and also there's one song that's not Indigenous by a woman named Hannah Georges, and yeah. So I mean, I just listen. I'm always listening to music to see what would work for me. The cast, yeah. I mean,
mind blown.
Yeah, they're all so good. I went with a combination of seasoned and inexperienced actors, and then non-actors. The non-actors, because I was committed to trying to use people from the community, participate, be part of the film, feel, have that sense of ownership, redistribution of wealth, if you like, reciprocity. And budget. So sometimes it just meant that I couldn't afford to bring one more actor up, so I had to work with local people, which turned out. The cast is, I know Nathaniel Arcan for a long time. He and I sort of started out together. One of my first documentaries, Forgotten Warriors, he plays the young, Indigenous man going off to war, like so many of our people. We didn't have to enlist, but we did, to defend the land. And he's the young man who has to walk, hundreds of miles to be able to, go enlist, which, is amazing. And, Canada had, never acknowledged that, or, and so Nathaniel and I have been friends. I consider him my brother. Release, I did a series, or I tried to do a series called Sky and Chang, which is a sci-fi martial arts series, and I did the pilot for it. And Release was Sky. So she's, I love working with her. I'd never worked with Adam before, and people really were encouraging me to include Adam because, of course, he has a name. But I'm really glad I chose him because he was so focused, and the elders loved him. The elders were just, all they wanted to do was have time. In fact, he gave up. He was so busy. He had a short shoot time. So he was busy the whole time he was there, but he still took the time. He took like a half a day just to go, visit with the elders, and they just loved it. So that was really amazing. And all the actors that are sort of new, like Nick the Jelly. Is a young man who I know his parents, Mike, who plays the Bagwas, the Sasquatch. And so it was so easy for me to cast him because he just has I don't know, he's from the area. He's not Haisla, but he's, from the territories and those stuff. So it's just fitting. And then also Stephanie Mathias is someone who's from Squamish. Again, I've known her for a long time, and I always knew I wanted to work with her, and I was so glad that there was finally a role that she could, I could include her in. And Takaya Blaney, who is an activist in her own right, and that's really her work, but she's also sort of been going into acting. I know I'm leaving people. And Joe Ouellette. Joe Ouellette was, that was his first sort of, I guess, big break for making this film. Now he's in that TV series called Trickster. So I feel good about all, and the young kids. Zoe Snow is such a sweetheart, and she so wants to be not famous. She wants to be an actor, and so she was sweet. And the little guy Oliver, who plays young Jimmy, he's just never missed a line, always hit his mark. So it's remarkable how disciplined and how focused, and again that trust that we kind of built, that sort of family that we built.
Right. I would have to say that there's definitely a lot of focus. I mean, I think even me, Brittany and I were talking about Adam Beach's time in the film. I won't give anything away, but I mean, the time in the film is just so, for me, I thought it was very powerful. Time well spent with him on screen. And
he's a quintessential uncle. And he does it so well.
And so my second part to my question really is, because the whole time watching the film, I'm just like, this is so right. This is so great. Why can't we get this in the mainstream? Like, why, especially here in America? Like, what do we have to do collectively as Indigenous people to get our writers, our showrunners, our producers, directors, to get these things on main screen, even the small screen to the big screen? What's Canada doing right that we need to catch up on?
Well, they weren't always doing great for a long time, because it's taken me over 10 years to make this film. And I can assure you, I was banging on those doors for many years. So it's not like Canada can basically say, oh, look how wonderful we are. Look how we're supporting all these Indigenous filmmakers. I think that there has been, for years and years, I've been making films since the 90s, really. And there was a group of us, and we were always trying to sort of transform the system. We have a different system that helps to begin with. We have a more government-sponsored system. So we have the National Film Board, we have Telefilm, we have the Canada Media Fund. And we have APTN, the Aboriginal, like the native channel in Canada. So we already have that sort of foundation, and that, that certainly has helped. But it's that kind of activism that we did in the 90s. Not to say you guys aren't doing that activism, but maybe there were smaller numbers of us. So we were always collectively saying, how can we change this? How can we transform this? And, we had, I can remember, I was thinking about this recently, and how many meetings we had with all those agencies, where we put forward our research, put forward our presentations, and say how, there's a constitutional obligation, we have sovereignty, and these are things that, telling stories and using the technologies of today is part of exercising our sovereignty. There's something called the Canada Broadcast Act that's supposed to include Indigenous storytelling or Indigenous media within the context of the Canadian Broadcast Act. So all these things, all these kinds of institutions have been, there to a point, but part of it's because of our activism. And then I guess recently, and then so what's happened because of that, there's a sort of like a skill level, a level of craft that's built up over the years. And on my children's series, when I realized, I wasn't going to be able to make those features, as I had imagined, I thought, well, I'm going to have to produce my own work because I have to make a livelihood. I have to support my family. So I was able to go to APTN and able to develop these children's series. And because of that, I would be hiring Indigenous crews and Indigenous directors and Indigenous writers. So kind of, building up a layer of kind of community, and of course other Indigenous producers doing the same. So we certainly have an advantage because of those government agencies, but it still means a lot of work. What I have sometimes a problem with is this, what, the sort of the colonial idea is to pick one or two and kind of say, oh, well, now we see we got our Indigenous, star, and that's all we need to do. We don't need to do anymore. And if the rest of you aren't there, then that's because of your fault. It's not because of us. So there is that kind of colonial mentality that we get sort of sucked into sometimes, and there's sort of a celebrity culture that results with that. So I'm always resisting that, and always trying to kind of be as inclusive as I can. And hiring our people, as much and as I can, creating spaces. I created something called the Ion 4 Lab, which is an immersive lab, XR, VR, AR, recently, so for that very reason, to kind of create a more inclusive space for anybody who wants to learn immersive technologies and use it in their storytelling can come and learn, and we'll help you produce. So. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you guys are remarkable too. I mean, there's amazing filmmakers down there. I mean, I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is like when I set up the IM4 Lab, I set it up with the governance of matriarchs. So I think that one of the strengths of Indigenous filmmaking in Canada is the matriarchs, the aunties, the people, the women who have been kind of driving it for the people first. So I think that's kind of makes a difference. I don't know. I don't want to brag or make it sound like somehow we're better, because we have our struggles too, and we have our missteps.
I think there's a lot we can learn both ways. So I really love how you're explaining that system, because different folks work in different systems, and sometimes we get so entrenched in our own little system going, gosh, it sucks, that we don't necessarily see the other things that are happening. So thank you so much for sharing that wisdom. Hopefully it'll help some other folks create more systems of matriarchs and aunties. I love that.
Well, I look, the billions and trillions of dollars that have come out of Canada from resources that are ours, right? From the land that, we were entrusted with. And really, there should be no poverty. There should be absolutely no poverty in our lands. There should be clean water for all our First Nations. There should be every storyteller who wants to make a film or make a TV series or something. There should be the resources and the means to do that. So it just breaks my heart when, I meet people who've been trying like me, but, I never give up, kind of thing. But some other people, it's hurtful, right? When you've been trying for so many years. So that, that shouldn't be, that shouldn't be. And so, I mean, we really have to assert our sovereignty at every step. In Canada recently, supposedly signed on to UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Mm-hmm. And so in there, people think of it mostly as sovereignty of governance, but governance includes, you have to be able to communicate who you are, So we need to have that sovereignty over the screens. I think that's really critical. And that applies to wherever Indigenous people are.
Absolutely. And that's kind of steering back to the movie, but also recognizing some of you had some beautiful transitions in the film. And not only was it, I mean, you referenced it earlier in the book where she goes between past and present, and you also included very much the land. And I found myself just in awe of what was happening. And how did you decide? Because I know you just talked about that place and space where you wanted to do that piece, but you couldn't. How did you actually decide what pieces of the land or what representations of the land to include, particularly in those beautiful transitions?
Well, again, having been, trying to make this film for a long time, at one point they said, there was a point at which they said, oh, well, now it's scissor wheel, but it's real. But not that many years ago, they said, oh, you have to do a book. You have to do a book. So I did a book that sort of basically showed my director's vision of the film. And in that book, it was, land as character. But It's more than land as character. It's land as witness. Because,
yes,
the land is basically, the one that's holding those stories and, knows those stories. And so that was really critical to me, that there was a feeling that the land was actually an active agent in this. And also, like I say, witness. So it's alive. It's more than just pretty pictures. It's actually alive and participating, you know. And so that was really critical to me. And even the way the lenses I chose, that was important to me, because there's a scene in which, you know, Grace, Lisa, and Tabitha, Sarah, Lisa, and Grace Dove, they are having this moment in the parking lot, and I chose these certain lenses, which I had to fight for because there weren't that many and they're very expensive. But I wanted them because it would make the land always feel alive. So whatever's in the background, even if it's out of focus, because that's kind of the way now, right? You don't film everything like me. You know, in old days it was to be, you know, depth of field was, as it was called, you know, so you could see everything right to the, you know, to the far horizon. But now it seems to be because of 4K and 5K, you know, everything kind of sort of shifted, those kind of choices. But I find that, so, you know, you generally putting background a little bit out of focus, but it wasn't just putting it out of focus. I wanted it to feel alive. I wanted to feel the energy, you know, and that those particular lenses helped me do that. So, yeah, so there's those choices and those transitions. Well, those transitions, some of them are, you know, from her dreams or her visions, and other ones are just again, the idea of witnessing this beautiful land, and you know, the fact that these you know, the Haisla people, in a way it's honoring of them too, that, you know, they've been stewards of this land. They've been what they call them, I think they call themselves water watchers. There's a group of people call themselves water watchers. And so they're there to protect the land, to protect the water. And so in a way it was kind of honoring their efforts as well. So.
You know, one thing for me in this film I noticed is that it really showcases relationships. You know, from the very beginning, you know, the relationship of, you know, Lisa coming home, you know, and her community. And then the big two relationships for me is seeing Lisa and her uncle Mick, you know, who was played by Adam Beach. And then we have Lisa's relationship with her mama O. I mean, how can you like explain that journey arc on how you did that, along with, you know, what Mrs. Robinson actually wrote, but then what you put on screen? Because that's what was my takeaway from the movie, was seeing those two beautiful stories in that relationship.
Well, you know, sometimes, you know, it's really important for us to tell our stories and what we've experienced, and, you know, the worlds we live in. And like you say, there's trauma, there's grief, there's all these things that is sort of have been part of our lives for way too long. So, but I've always, in my filmmaking, I've always tried to be hopeful. The very first documentary I made, when I made with a group of Indigenous educators, I went to them all and said, what kind of film do you want me to make? And they all said hopeful. And every film, I've always asked that question, and every time the answer has been hopeful. So to me, it was really important to make this film hopeful. And one of the ways of doing that to me is those relationships. And even though there's, you know, again, all those traumas and all that grief, you know, we do have strong emotional bonds. We do have families that love and care for one another. You know, we keep being told we're broken. We keep being told that, you know, we need to be fixed, and yet here we, you know, but we're human. We have love, we have affection, we have bonds with our families. We're always trying to make the world better for one another, and, you know, and so those are things that I really wanted to capture, that sense of, I don't know, I guess this comes down to family. I mean, family is so critical to who we are as Indigenous people, and I wanted to counter that. I wanted to really counter that idea that, you know, in fact, that was part of the struggle of making this film, because sometimes feedback I'd get, well, you know, there's almost, they wouldn't say it outright, but, well, in fact, they did at one point. I remember one broadcaster said, oh, well, you know, Lisa has to deal with her alcoholism. And I was like, she's not an alcoholic. I know that's not even in the book. That's not even in the story. But somehow, because she parties and so on, and then she must be an alcoholic, right? So, in order to deal with that, I just took it out. I just took it, you know, there was a point at which she was sort of still struggling, coming back to the city and, you know, trying to decide, should I have that swig or not? And I thought, I'm just going to take it all out, because all it's going to do is reinforce, and those people, and especially with those people who are expecting that narrative, and they're going to say, well, you didn't deal with that narrative. Well, it's not there, because what's important is the underlying love. She has so much love for her family. That's been one of her struggles, is that she has so much love for her family, but it's painful because of those losses and those traumas, and the fact that she feels helpless sometimes. Well, what can I do? And so there's that love. Really, in the end, that was the most critical thing for me, is to pervade the film with love. And I didn't mention Tina Lehman. Tina Lehman's just amazing as Mama O. She's
amazing.
Yeah, she's I mean, she's been nominated and winning awards. She won the Best Actor award at the Red Nation Film Festival, and rightfully so. She's really amazing, and we're actually from similar territory and probably are related along the ways. But I saw her in a APTN series back in the day, and there was such a charm about her that I thought, there's a charm, but there's a toughness there, right? Mm-hmm. So that so I knew that somehow that was my Mama O. So I'm so grateful for how she did, and she has that sort of like, she took young Lisa under her wing, and really in many ways became young Lisa's grandma right there on set, and so she has that sort of understanding, a great deep understanding of the kind of responsibilities you have as storytellers, and even as an actor, she's a storyteller, and so she certainly understands the responsibilities that go with that.
Now, we both really enjoyed watching the film, but could you tell the folks at home maybe where they can find it and any new projects that you have? Because now I literally want to go consume everything that you've ever done, because this has been beautiful. It's been wonderful. It truly has been amazing. I'm not just fangirling.
That's good. Well, we haven't got it to the States yet. I mean, we're lucky that it was shown at the American Indian Film Festival, and I was so honored to win Best Director and Best Actor and Best Film, and then we won. We actually swept all the drama awards with all the actors as well. And I was so I dedicated my the Best Picture award to Michael Smith, who of course started the American Indian Film Festival, and so he means so much. The late Michael Smith, sadly, and then also the Red Nation Film Festival. They also showed it. Red Nation Film Festival is showing it until the end of December online. I don't know, that's not going to help in the long term. In Canada, we're about to go on Crave in January, which is one of the channels here. But in the States, I haven't found a distributor. I've basically been self-distributing. We're fortunate to get into Cineplex in Canada before there was another big shutdown because of COVID. So at one point, I was the #1 Canadian film in the theaters in Canada. It was just in certain provinces where the numbers were not too high for COVID. So they were COVID restricted screenings with limited box office, but nonetheless, it was a great honor. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to, I guess in the new year, I'll start knocking on doors to see if I can find a distributor or a sales agent. I'm going to be showing at a film festival called On the Bayou. I think it's called On the Bayou Cinema. It's in Lafayette, Louisiana, and they'll be streaming it, but I don't know if it will be geo-blocked to just Louisiana. I'm not sure. And other than that, I've been, submitting to festivals, and hopefully there'll be some more festivals that will pick it up. I didn't submit to Sundance. I did submit the year before when the film wasn't finished, and it wasn't finished, so it wasn't chosen. But I didn't submit again this year. But hopefully some festival will pick it up. If people really, really want to see it, they can reach out to me, and I can see if I can find a way to screen it for them. And if anybody has any contacts at Netflix or any of those other places, we'll see. I know I'm talking. There's an Indigenous distributor here in Canada who is. We'll be talking in the new year and seeing if we could, make a deal with. We can't show in Canada on Netflix because we already have the broadcasters lined up, but we could show outside of Canada on Netflix. So who knows? That would be a big deal. Netflix, from what I hear, doesn't pay a lot of money, but that's not for indie films. But to me, that's not important right now. What's important is just to get the film out to the people. And I think that's been our greatest audience. Non-Indigenous people love it too, but Indigenous people just sort of like flock to it. And I've, people send me emails and, messages on social media saying they've seen it 3 or 4 times and they can't wait to see it again. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming.
Well, I think Netflix they need you.
Yes.
They need you.
Absolutely.
So if our listeners don't know, I mean, shoot, let's go knock on a few doors for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, or call Netflix. We heard about this film called Monkey Beach. We'd love to see it.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how you reach out to any of these people sometimes because they seem so.
I'm sending my email. That's what I'm doing. I'm sending my email right now.
Cool.
But it's been such a blessing and an amazing moment just to have this conversation with you. And Monkey Beach is such an amazing film. More people need to see it, and I'm excited to see your next work. And on between me and Brittany, just thank you for being on our podcast, and it was great talking to you.
Hi. So yeah, it's been so enjoyable. I'm glad that I made the effort to get on screen, and so I'm really glad to actually meet you and see you both, and I'm very, very honored and appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, Coyote's Crazy Smart Science Show, I think might be coming to FNX. So you can keep an eye out for that. But other than, I don't know. I got other projects. Maybe that other feature that I've been trying to make forever. Maybe that one will get made too. So yeah. So take care and thank you so much. And all your good words have really uplifted me. So now I can get even more work done. So.
All right, that's it. That's our special episode of Monkey Beach. We promise we'll send you as much links and information that we can so that you guys can, rally behind Monkey Beach. And, just letting you guys know, season 3 is coming. We will have season 3 in February. So for me, I'm out.
Bye.